Hey, it's Hugh Hewitt, and when I want to know what's going on with the Cavs, the Browns, and the Tribe, I tune into Sports Fix.
Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from the Sports Fix, and we always talk about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
And away we go, off and running. There we go. I think they can hear this pretty well. We are live on the air. A special edition of the Sports Fix getting ready to come your way here. It's the kickoff of a holiday week, of course, 4th of July, Independence Day coming up at the end of the week. We're going to have some fun this week, and you know what? Sometimes things work out well, because this was a tough weekend, Tribe fans. This was a tough weekend here, and coming back today talking about the Indians, we've made it a lot more comfortable, because we're going to talk about the Indians on the celluloid much more than the ones on the baseball diamond this weekend. We're talking Major League, Cleveland Indians, the making of it. My man, the sports writer extraordinaire, Jonathan Knight. He's not on the phones. He is here live in studio. JK, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, Jerry. In the house. This is bizarre in a way.
I love it.
This is great to be. We talked about it Friday, to be where the magic happens, to be in the Emerald City. It's just a different vibe. It's a different experience. It's great. You know, I remember the last time I did this. So I've been on the show now for 4 years.
Was that when I was out of town?
I can remember coming in to fill in for you as a guest host one night, and then you showed up anyway, so it was great. But it was in fact it was this like April of 2011. So we're talking 4 years since I've been live, not live necessarily, but in person, I guess is what we're saying on the Sports Fix.
Man, I think that was one of the nights that started the beef between me and Sean back then, man. I think, wasn't he late showing up?
I think you're right, actually. I think that's right. That was the line in the sand just started to be drawn that night. Yeah.
I was out of town and you were coming in, and I'm like, man, we got somebody coming in and you couldn't even get there on time. Oh, I was mad about that. That was fun.
Yeah, and I was oblivious to all of this at the time.
Good stuff, man. Well, welcome. How was your drive down? You got a lot going on here today. This
is my book tour. You know, like Tom Clancy, Stephen King go on a month-long book tour. Mine's about 7.5 hours. So it starts today. So so I'm bouncing around all over today. But fitting that we start with the Sports Fix, because this is where so much inspiration has, whether me or others. This is the cradle from which all great ideas are born.
I don't know about all that, but he's sitting here, and I am kind of a big guy, so I'm sure I know why he's saying that, man. No, I'm kidding, man. I love it.
Yeah, that's the downside of being in person is now he can snap me in half. I mean, he can just hang up on me on the phone. Now there's a threat here.
We are having some fun. We are just getting going, you guys. I see a couple of you in the chat room. Welcome in JK here. Welcome in you guys. Hey, you know what? Let's do this official. Welcome everybody in. We're going to talk a little bit about the news of the weekend. We'll talk some Tribe, of course, I'm sure, as we're going. Probably hit on some Cavs and some Browns. But for the most part, we're talking Major League, the movie, the making of it. Of course, the great book we've talked about by my man, Jonathan Knight. Since he's here in studio, we're going to be able to open up the phones and more. So let's get rocking and rolling. Welcome in, you guys, to the Sports Fix. Another week, the final. We're at the end of June here, getting ready to crack another month. We are live across the Sports Fix radio network. Maybe you're listening live on TuneIn or TuneIn's radio apps worldwide, Spreaker, Mixler, their digital and mobile apps, or perhaps You're listening right on our home base, thesportsfix.net. One-stop shop for everything you need. And make sure you keep your eyes open. There may be some switching over the site. You may find some things changing because our web guy is making the websites more mobile-friendly this week and doing some changes. So if you do, bear with us. But everything will be up and running. Make sure you bookmark it today, thesportsfix.net. Like I said, your one-stop shop for everything you need. And as well, welcome in all of you guys who listen, thousands of you around the world, 24 hours a day on sites like iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio network, on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, all of the places that, and by the way, many of you on Stitcher are saying, hey, we got the show back. Apparently, once we got the feed switched over, there's been about 500 downloads in the last 24 hours of people catching up on the shows that they missed for the 2 weeks. But good to be back up on Spreaker, good to be back up everywhere, and good to be here in studio. As I said, if you missed it, I am the big daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers, over here to my left with me in the studio, Jonathan Knight, the Sportswriter extraordinaire, and you guys, of course, are the most important part of this whole thing. Whether it's on social media, whether it's on the phone lines, be a part of the show and get your fix. Pick up the phones, give us a call, 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535 is the number to call. Social media, always the best way to do it. Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at thesportsfixcle. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Again, Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Twitter at thesportsfixcle. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. I don't know, JK. I mean, I guess before we get into the book, there's Charles on Twitter there saying he just picked up his copy last Friday. Way to go.
Nice.
That's what we like to see here. Cha-ching. Put that in the pocket.
And my kids need braces, so I appreciate that.
And you know what? Before we get into the book and stuff, you and I were talking before. We don't got to beat ourselves over the head with it. But, man, what a tough weekend for the Tribe here this weekend. I mean, you go to Baltimore and get swept and don't score.
And you don't score. Oh. That's the really rubbing it in. It's one thing to get swept. Baltimore's a nice team. They're strong. They're a perennial playoff team. That's one thing to go in there and get swept. But to get... I think there's a couple of ways why that really rubs it in. One, to get swept in a doubleheader, 2 losses in one day, that hurts. To not score a run in 2 games in one day, that hurts. And for one of the games to be Ubaldo Jimenez shutting you down is perhaps the cherry on top of everything.
I know. Oh, I mean, and it just... You and I were talking. Okay, I'm the perennial optimist, and I'm not giving up on this season. Even besides being optimist, I believe this team is better than this. I mean,
certainly.
I'm looking at my TV yesterday, and I'm looking at my son, and I'm going, these guys are better than this. Regardless, maybe they're not great as we thought they would be, but they're better than the way they're playing now. But I'm wondering, is it to the point where you start to, I mean, you should be worried, but like, are you sure it's going to turn around? Because we're getting to, when's the middle? How many games are they at? We've got to be close.
We're very, very close.
The middle point.
Yeah.
But I know there's time. I saw somebody, what was it, just the other day, I saw somebody start the tweets about how many games back people have been. And there was 73 Red Sox were 14 and a half games out of first place, and then they came back or whatever. I'm serious. Can you think of a time that a team, other than 1 or 2 occasions, has been a dozen games out of first place, hitting the month of July, and came back? Now, with 2 wild cards, there is something to come back to.
Right.
But, I mean, what do we look for here in the second half? Are they folding up camp or what?
Yeah, realistically, I think if you want to maintain that optimism, you have to cling to that wild card theory,
and that sucks.
That second wild card. And I don't like that either. I think we've talked about this before, that not crazy about the second wild card, even if the Indians benefit from it, which they did a couple of years ago. But yeah, to envision them coming all the way back from 12 games with and it's not even necessarily a question of the Indians turning it around and playing better. Kansas City is an incredibly good team. You've still got a Detroit team that the Indians cannot beat if their lives depended on it. So you'd have to leapfrog 3 teams and even Minnesota kind of coming out of nowhere. You would think they would level off, but it's less about what the Indians can do in terms of wins and losses than how are you going to be better than 1 team, 2 teams, 3 teams that are ahead of you, and that's where optimism starts to break down a little bit. I think if you want to cling to optimism, if you want to look for something over this last half of the season. Let's get back to 500. Let's get back to 81 wins. I mean, that should be the goal at this point. I think anything more than that is a little unrealistic. But they really should be. But that's where they should be. That's the type of team this is. There's no reason why this team shouldn't be 500.
I mean, offensively, look at the run differential, and just a few weeks ago, it was the opposite. The Indians were close to 500. They were still under 500, but they were plus 30 runs in the run differential, because Dan and I were talking about it one day, and he was shocked when I brought it up. He said, oh, I wouldn't have thought that, because they were struggling scoring, but they had those couple of double-digit games where they scored some runs. But look at it now. I mean, it makes sense when you look at the division. The division lines up perfectly here. I mean, the team with the best differential is in first place, and it works its way on down. And how about the White Sox, man? That's
surprising.
81. But, I mean, 39 runs, and the way they're scoring, that's the difference in every one of these games. The minute you put a run on the board, you've got the Indians beat most nights.
Yeah, that's what's really frustrating about it. You would look at that and see that 39 run differential and think, boy, the pitching hasn't been great. And it hasn't been. But realistically, you could basically take the 2 shutouts yesterday and the 17-0 loss to the Cubs last week, and there's your differential, essentially. Yep. That's about 39 runs right there, pretty close. And that's why you get shut out 3 times in a week and a half. Yeah, that's going to – and you're giving up lopsided run totals on the other side. Yeah, that's going to make a huge difference in that statistic, if no others. You take away those 3 games, I think that's much closer to where the Indians have been the rest of the year.
I mean, what can they do? I mean, Bruce has got a great point in the chat room. We can point at Nick Swisher or whatever all you want, and you say one guy can't fix everything, and that's true. How do you get this offense working? I mean, they struggled early, and then we said it was early, and then they got warm, and we said, oh, now the weather warmed up, the offense warmed up. Well, now the weather's warmed up even more, and the offense is cold again. What do they need to do? I mean, Moss is, I had to laugh, and I love Tom Hamilton, but I was listening to the game. Was it yesterday? Might have been the first game of the doubleheader. I was in the car for a minute, or maybe it was Friday. No, it was Friday night's game, I think. But it was about Moss, and he was talking about how Moss was 5 of his last 9, and he goes, and I couldn't believe Hammy said this, because Hammy's pretty. He doesn't go overboard with the praise, and he goes, boy, Rosie. Moss looks like he's ready to go on a tear. He just looks like he's locked in right now. And obviously, we didn't score a run all weekend. I mean, but he was 5 of 9. Before that, he was batting .215 with runners in scoring position. I know he leads the team in home runs, but he had one game where he had 3 home runs. He had a couple of multi-home run games. You take those out of the way, and he is very ineffective. But I was shocked. I'm listening, and I'm going, boy, they're pulling hard. Like, you can tell when the orders from up top are coming down. Listen, we've got a homestand coming up. We need to give people a reason to buy tickets.
We've got bobbleheads to give away. That's funny you mentioned Friday night, because as much as people are really focusing on getting shut out twice Sunday, and I don't want to breeze past that because that's hugely embarrassing, but I think Friday night is even more indicative of the Indians' problems in that they score 3 runs on 3 solo home runs and lose 4-3.
Kluber was great.
Once again, Corey Kluber does not get a victory in a game that he pitched well enough to win. He didn't get the loss. But is there anything more reflective of this Indian season that if just anybody had been on base for any of those home runs, if anybody else would have stepped up, not to even hit a home run, just get a walk, get on base, the Indians win that game. But they can't. So they hit 3 solo home runs and lose. That's all they could manage. And then, of course, go 18 innings without scoring a single run on Sunday. So, does this weekend not reflect exactly the Indians' problems on offense?
I'm telling you, Corey Kluber was I couldn't believe it, because I stopped following the game because I got where I was going, and it was maybe the 6th inning, because at that point, the Indians had just sent a tweet. I just got it on my phone that said, Kluber's dealing. Yeah, he's got 10 strikeouts in 5 innings, and I'm like, yeah, all right. And I turned the game back on, and he was just finishing up the 7th or 8th inning, and the Tribe was down. And I'm like, wait a minute. What happened here, man?
Yeah. I mean, he's become Justin Masterson. If you remember the last couple of years, that was always the strike against him, was that he would get no run support, and that's where it is. And if you look at poor Corey Kluber, I mean, to be fair, he is not as good as he was last year. He'll go on little blips on the radar, and that's fine. But he is certainly better than 3-9. And you look at his record and think, whoa, boy, he's really fallen off the radar. He's the Cy Young jinx, whatever you want to call it. And that is not what's happening. He's not as sharp as he was, but my gosh, if he were just getting average run support, he would, again, he'd be at 500, above 500. He'd have 6, 7, 8 wins. He would be much better than what we're seeing on his stat line.
And I know this is somewhere, and you and I can go different. We'll get away from this, and we'll get into the book, and we'll have more fun in a minute. But what you and I were just saying before the show, I just want to repeat on the air, because this is the question that should drive any Tribe fan crazy. I do believe things can get better, but if they don't, what happens? Because nobody wants to look at changing and things that may happen. I love Terry Francona. I don't want him to go anywhere. The problem is the people that do need to go somewhere are the front office, and they're tied together. Are we looking at a situation, if this thing crumbles the rest of the way, do we lose them all? Because if Shapiro and Antonetti go, Francona can walk away from his contract. Now, maybe he won't. Maybe he'll say, hey, guys, I'm going to keep the job. But there's a reason that they put that clause in there. What do we start from scratch here in the middle of this whole thing?
That seems to be sort of the Faustian deal that Indians fans have to deal with. It's so easy to say, oh, get rid of Shapiro, get rid of Antonetti, get rid of these guys.
Yes.
It's their fault. But you're absolutely right. You say, well, if they're gone, then Francona almost certainly is gone as well. Are you willing to pay that price? Because it is very unlikely that you can both of those guys, which they probably won't happen anyway. But even if that were to happen, 90% chance that Francona is out the door too. He wouldn't, not only because it's in his contract, but why would he want to go through a rebuilding situation? He's beyond that in his career.
And he's much more in demand as a coach than he was in 2013.
Absolutely. He would get snapped up so fast. Yeah.
He
is the best thing about this organization right now in terms of a management level. Terry Francona is the shining star that the Indians are trying to hitch their wagon to. So it's difficult to imagine them doing anything that would jeopardize his staying with the Indians.
And he's a second-half coach. That's why I do believe that this team will play better in the second half. But if they don't, that's really got me wondering. And then you see a weekend like this weekend, and you just wonder the body language. I'm not worried about the wins and losses necessarily. The body language says we quit. And I know you can't quit in June, but are they at a point where they need some spark? And what is it? You've already brought up Lindor. You've already brought up Urshela.
Yeah, there's nothing left. I mean, there's really no secret weapon that they can trot out. They've demoted Chisenhall. I mean, you're looking at there are players that can improve, but my gosh, what do you replace them with? How can you possibly right this ship in midstream?
And I'll tell you what, Mike Brandenberry and I, we've been talking about, how hard it is to leapfrog 2 or 3 teams in the division, let alone to get, up there.
Sure.
And I just pulled up the wild card standings in front of you, and that's even more of a climb. There are 8 teams between the Indians and the 2 wild card spots. They are 7.5 games back. They've got Seattle, Texas, the Angels, the Tigers, the Blue Jays, the Twins, and the Yankees. In front of them, Tampa Bay and Baltimore have.
It's easier to just list who's below.
Who's
them.
not?
I mean, it's basically the Indians, Oakland, and in Boston and the White Sox.
3 teams.
That's it.
3 teams.
And then it's
below
the Indians
Tribe.
versus the field. I mean, they have to leapfrog the entire American League just to get to the second wild card. I mean, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's amazing. They have made their job so much harder in the second half that I don't know what to do. And the fact that they can't win at home is the worst part.
Incredibly troubling. I don't understand that. We were talking about that earlier too. For all of the struggles that the Indians have had in recent years, going back to Manny Acta, going back to Eric Wedge, they've never had trouble winning at home. Not to the dominant stage of the 90s, but they have not to this extent. This is ridiculous what we've seen.
And I got to tell you, you know what? For as much as you talk about these guys, and maybe we say maybe Carlos Santana is just a 220 hitter. Ooh, there's another one that I heard Hammy say over the weekend, and I was shocked. He said Santana came up during I think it was during the first game Sunday, and I heard him go, "At what point do you wonder, is Carlos Santana just a 220 hitter and he's not going to turn it around?"
4 years ago.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe that Hammy was the one saying that.
That's really surprising to hear him say that, and hats off to him for making that statement. I mean, I think it's where the rest of us are. But yeah, you've got it. You're at the point where you just have to accept that Carlos Santana, if not a 220 hitter, that he certainly is not going to be better than a 240 hitter. I mean, that's just, we've never seen. I think his best numbers were 268 2 years ago, and you got to look at that now compared to everything else and say that's the aberration.
I'll take that right now.
Year, oh, totally. I would 268. Yes, please. I mean, that alone would give him try 2 or 3 more wins.
But look at, okay, we love to put people up on pedestals here. Mickey Callaway is the greatest coach we've ever seen now. He's the great pitching coach, and he is. Obviously, he does a great job with guys. And I mean, look at the trouble we've had with the fifth starter, and he's kept it alive at least. I mean, but, what about the opposite? Charles here says the hitting coach, fire him. I mean, this is multiple seasons in a row of pitiful offense. Like, at some point, doesn't the hitting coach be held responsible? Like, I've never even heard of the guy, that the Indians have doing the job right now. And that's, I'm not saying you've got to be Eddie Murray or Dave Winfield. You got to have that pedigree. But, when Charlie Manuel was the hitting coach, people hit. People hit for a long time,
But at the same time, like you said, this is now multiple years and multiple hitting coaches that the Indians have not. True. If you remember in 2011, even when they got off to that great start in 2011, they fired their batting coach, I think, the first week of the season. I mean, right off the rip, after a bad weekend, they fired their hitting coach, and it maybe made a difference. I don't know that it really made a difference necessarily in guys' techniques, but it sort of rattled everybody and woke everybody up, and I think that's what you're shooting for when you fire a hitting coach or a pitching coach. But, yeah, at some point you got to say, what difference does it make who the hitting coach is? These guys just cannot hit. I mean, Carlos Santana is a 240 career hitter under 3 or 4 different batting coaches. I mean, is it really going to make a difference who you bring in? It's not to say that they're not going to. They probably will. Something's going to happen here by the All-Star break, I would think. There's going to be some kind of shakeup. But will it make a big difference? Maybe for a day or two, probably not much longer.
And that's the thing, is when you talk about it, we've seen it before. Most teams, when they fire the hitting coach, even if you get you'll get an uptick for maybe a couple of weeks where guys will hit a little better, and then it goes back to the average because it's baseball.
You're not changing these guys. These guys are, you can help them fine-tune things, and especially if they're there in the off-season, they work with them in spring training.
Off-season.
Then it can make a difference. And that's what we've seen. The Indians have been blessed with some really good pitching coaches. This isn't like they're bringing in a guy who's going to fix a struggling hitter overnight. That's not how this works.
I'm just asking, how come as I Google search Indians hitting coach, I see Brooke Jacoby. He's a hitting coach for the Toronto Blue Jays. Yeah. I see, Travis Hafner wants to be a hitting coach.
Bring him in. What the heck?
I'm just saying. Yeah. Manny Ramirez is with the Cubs. Now, Manny may be Manny, but one thing Manny Ramirez knows how to do is hit the baseball. Yeah. Like, I'm just saying, Jacoby, these are guys that were in the Indians. Hell, somebody hire Julio Franco right now.
He's probably still playing somewhere.
He is.
Actually.
I just saw it.
Did
you know that?
I did not know that. I was making a joke.
Julio
He's got to be
Franco
about
is
65 years old by now. God, that's amazing.
No, I just saw it. It was just this last season. He signed another contract. He's like the oldest player out there. Look, he's still playing. He's a player manager. 56. He's player manager.
56 in his 45th year in professional baseball at this point.
Yes,
My
dude.
gosh.
Think about it.
Unbelievable.
Think about that, man.
Well, here's a name to throw out a name here for batting coach. Okay, Jerry, you'll catch this. Let's see if you catch this. Duke Temple.
Is that it's from Major League,
It's from
right?
Major League.
Yeah,
the batting coach from
go.
Major League. Let's bring him in here, right? Steve Yeager. Steve Yeager. He's working. He works as an instructor, a catching instructor. Bring him in here. Let's catch some lightning in a bottle.
Why doesn't Terry Francona just go up there and tell these guys, the next time you strike out, drop and give me 10 push-ups right there.
Yeah.
Instantly, guys will be doing push-ups left and right.
Just to entertain the fans. Just for us. Like, who cares if it does any good? You pop the ball up on the infield, you drop and give me 20.
I would love to see Terry Francona take Nick Swisher's contract, walk out onto the field, and just go, look, drop it on the ground, take a leak on that thing, and just walk away.
Yes.
I'm just
saying.
No
dialogue, nothing to be said. God knows we'd have some volunteers. Some Indians fans would love to piss on that contract.
Oh, yes, absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right, man. I mean, look, the Indians, they are what they are, man. And I don't even think I got my daily email from the Indians yet today.
They've just stopped. You talk about the players quitting? The marketing department has just called it in. They phoned it in. They're done.
Poor Joel Hammond, man.
Poor guys. That's and I think it's important to point out too that there's so many people. who are not in any way involved in the baseball decisions, in the front office decision, whatever, that work so hard to promote a team that is often unpromotable.
Yes.
You think of these poor guys. I mean, just through the years, not just this year. How many times that this team was not the 1990s Indians, that they were not hot, they were not sexy. Nobody wanted to watch these guys, and these good people work so hard and get no credit for it.
This is the press release from yesterday. This is what the Indians sent out. It's just funny how short and concise it is. The Orioles swept a day-night, rain-induced doubleheader on Sunday.
They throw rain-induced in there as if like that. Well, it was raining. That's why we couldn't hit.
Trevor Bauer, and in his big league debut, Toru Murata took losses for the Indians. There's a name from Major League right there.
Yeah, it really is.
Michael Brantley had 2 hits in the opener. David Murphy went 4 for 4 in the nightcap. That's it. We're not even talking about the game anymore.
Yeah.
They move on. Gavin Floyd's talking to sick kids, man. We're moving on to something else.
Yes, that's right. You mentioned David Murphy going 4 for 4, and that's
He's
something,
been doing well.
and he's been doing really well, and that's something not to pile on and make you more depressed, but you got to look at David Murphy hitting whatever he's hitting, 330. Who could have expected that? You talk about an overachiever. And Jason Kipnis coming back the way that he has. So it's not like everything has gone wrong for the Indians, or you look and say, oh, there's a riddle with injury. You can't really point to a specific disappointment or anything like that. They've had some pleasant surprises that you could not have anticipated. So you got to balance that against, wow, how bad are things going with what the guys that are not performing the way you expected when you have these unpleasant surprises and things are still nosediving.
That's what I've been saying about Jason Kipnis. What happens if he gets back to earth?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because the offense has
nothing else.
Brantley
gets hurt, or there's any number of ways that you're just like, boy, these guys that we're counting on to just keep their heads above water, if any of them drop off or something happens, whoa, look out below, my gosh.
And it doesn't get any easier. Look, and I mean, you talk about burying yourself. The 2 teams that we played, Baltimore over the weekend and now Tampa, those are the 2 wild card teams right there.
Yeah.
And so you go from one right into the other here as you go, and you've got 3 with Tampa coming up. I don't want to see this, not just because we have to talk about it every day or anything. I don't want to see this season just run away and become a countdown to training camp. You know,
Browns training camp. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's not like we've got.
We're not even looking ahead to next year. We're just like, please, Browns,
and that's
save
not
us.
Even good. That's not even good because they don't have anything.
It's going to be the same
great.
problems next spring. We're just delaying the problems. I mean, unless the Indians go out and have an off season to remember, we're going to be having these same conversations next March.
You know what? At least the Cavs made it so long that we're already closer.
That's right. We can finally bring that to an end. We didn't talk about that the last couple of weeks, but boy, the Cavs really did step up and take one for the Indians.
You know what? By the way, talking about that, look at this. It's just something I've been ranting about for the last couple of weeks. The crappy media and the way they're doing it all weekend long. I've come across. Look at the top headline on ESPN. Another decision. Last night I was over a friend's house and I pulled up my phone, and the first story on my timeline came from CBS Sports, and it was, what is your team's percentage to land LeBron James this summer? They only gave the Cavs a 95% chance, and then they went through every other team. They gave the Lakers a 2% chance. They gave the Knicks a 0.5% chance.
God, wow.
They gave the Clippers a 1% chance.
It's a slow week.
I'm like, come on. But the Kevin Love stuff, too.
Yeah.
Then, over the weekend, there was a picture apparently taken of Kevin Love and LeBron James at a pool party together. And some people are making a conspiracy out of that,
They're
too.
going to the Lakers together.
Are they going to the Lakers together?
God.
I mean, come on. But here's the thing. The other day, point blank, David Griffin said, I have talked to LeBron every day since the season ended. Mm-hmm. And the same day, there's an article put out that says, regardless what David Griffin said, LeBron's going dark until the Cavs wrap up their business. And I just cannot wrap my hand around the concept of asking a guy a question. Now, if he doesn't answer, if I say, JK, what's up with your book? And you don't tell me, then I'll speculate.
A non-denial denial.
I'm speculating.
Right.
But if I ask you, when's your book coming out? And you say June 1st. I go, well, regardless of what he said, we don't know when the book's
Yeah.
coming out. No, you just told me your answer. Why are we even in business? If I ask you a question and you answer it, and I say, well, I don't care what you just said.
There was no point in asking the question. Why did you even bother to ask a question if a yes, no? Yeah, I mean that's the nature of sports quote unquote journalism at this point. It's all speculation, rumor, scuttlebutt.
At least Kevin Love, I can get people kicking it around. Do you not think that a man who is as calculated as LeBron James with everything he does did not sit down last year? He didn't just come home. He sat down and said, obviously, this is going to be a few-year thing here. Right. I mean, if we're not ready to do it, then we'll wait. Because he was going to do it at some point. He was coming home, but when he was ready to stay. If he wanted to go somewhere else, he'd have went somewhere else first and then came back here. Right. You know, like, it would destroy. It really would hurt a lot of him, way worse than the first decision. Right. If he walked away now,
oh God,
it would crumble a lot of that.
Why would he have come back in the first place?
He's not stupid.
Why would he have come back for one? I mean, it's not like people can argue that, this season didn't go the way he thought, whatever. They made it to the frickin' finals, folks.
I know,
I think they exceeded expectations, and he's got to know that things have the potential to be so much better last year. Plus, to say nothing of the fact that this came up last year when he said he was coming. We said no. He can opt out. It's a business thing. This is going to happen. Everyone
knew.
This is like a thunderstorm warning has been called, and then we're surprised when it starts to rain.
That's the worst part. Right at the end of the season, David Griffin said they've already told us LeBron's opting out. Kevin Love's opting out. They're doing it with the intention
of... It's a business
of
decision. This is
coming back.
Right.
They made this very clear what they're going to do. But these people, and that's what drives me nuts, is because I watch, like yesterday, when you're friends with somebody, when they comment on something, it pops up on your news feed. So that's how I got directed to one of these articles, because I started seeing these people commenting, and they're flaming LeBron. Oh, look at him. He's leaving again. Because the way the title of the article was phrased, they take it as... And I'm like, come on,
itself, man. Yeah.
And it's getting people to click the button. That's all it is.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Let's just get this over. I mean, ignore it, really.
Yes,
you have to. There's nothing to report, so this is what they're reporting.
You think him and Kevin Love, this conversation took 2 minutes, goes, look, man, you saw what we did, right? You know what we're going to do next year, right? Like... Are we talking about anything else? Let's jump in the pool. They're not stupid.
You want another cheeseburger? How about some sunscreen?
I mean, that drives me crazy. But anyways, man, that's the silliness that's in the media nowadays, man. But let's hey, I see we got calls coming in. Let's go ahead and take a break here. Let's get you some news, and then let's start talking about Major League. Let's talk a little bit about this. I mean, I told you, I read it. It couldn't have been 2 days after I got it. I was done with it, man, and one of my favorite movies. But let's talk about what you went through putting it together and how much fun that was. How long did it take you to put this book together?
Altogether, it took 2.5 years, roughly.
Wow.
2 to 2.5. It was of all the books that I have done, this one took the longest. It wasn't necessarily the hardest. But in terms of how much time and energy, this one took the most.
I thought you were setting up a joke. I thought you were going to say, of all the books I've done, this is one of them. You know?
Yeah, that's not. I should have said that. Yeah, that'd have been much funnier.
No, all right. That, man, 2.5 years, man. That's amazing. But I mean, how much traveling did you do? Like, was there a ton of travel?
No. I mean, there was some traveling involved, but most of it was either online or on the phone or what have you. So there was that. That's again one of those areas that technology kind of helps out the writer as much as it is a detriment in some ways. So that was very helpful because it was widespread. I mean, I was talking with people from all over the country, not just Hollywood necessarily, from Montana to Wisconsin to everywhere. So I mean, it was a pretty wide net that was cast to put this thing together.
All right, let's talk about that wide net and talk about the book, the movies. You guys love them. We talk about them all the time. I mean, it is to me, the ultimate baseball movie is Major League. I know there's some other good ones too, but you got to live the dream, man, and sit down and get some work into that, man. So let's talk about it. When we come back, you guys, we're going to take your calls. We're going to talk about the making of Major League. Jonathan Knight, Sportswriter extraordinaire, in studio. See, we'll switch from the Indians that are driving you crazy to the ones that you love and love and love some more. Because you know what? you can always pop that DVD in anytime. And the Indians are winning again, man. And she still hates this effing song, man. So let's take a break. Let's get to the news. And when we come back, JK and I will pick it up. I know we got calls in the queue. I'll jump to you guys as well. We're talking Major League, the making of it, and more. Jonathan Knight, J-Rocc, you're listening to The Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into...
The Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
It's an addiction. The Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
How to be a great dad in 15 seconds. Bike ride, go fish, walk in the park, phone call, milkshake, play catch, picnic, fly a kite, tell jokes, laugh, talk, read a story, tell a story, bumper car, swing set, bowling, pillow fight, cut loose, stay tight. Whew. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs. There's literally only one place to go. FantasyJocks.com.
What's your fantasy?
Business owners and professionals, do you want to take your business, your product, your team, your event to the next level? You want to advertise right here with the Sports Fix. Our listeners are among the most loyal listeners, terrestrial or internet. The Sports Fix universe is not only the radio show, but tens of thousands of fans on Facebook and Twitter. Email me, Jerry Myers, thesportsfix@AOL.com. That's thesportsfix@AOL.com. And let me help you swing for the fences and hit it out of the park right here on the Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Signs and Ship, the official printing source of the Sports Fix. Locations in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Florida. Find out more at signsandship.com.
News break.
I'm Christine Lisi. Here's what's happening. Strong start at Wimbledon for Serena Williams as she begins her quest to become the first tennis player in more than a quarter of a century to win all four majors in the same season. Five-time Wimbledon champ, a straight sets winner in the first round at the All England Club. Novak Djokovic also a straight sets winner. Live coverage of Wimbledon continues on ESPN. NBA 37-year-old Spurs guard Manu Ginobili told the San Antonio Express News he'll announce his future plans, whether he'll return for another season or retire, in a self-written sports column in an Argentine newspaper. Pistons free agent Greg Monroe says he's looking to land with a team ready to win. He plans to speak with the Knicks, Celtics, Bucks, Blazers, and Hornets. According to the Racine Journal-Times, Brandon Knight will sign a 5-year, $70 million contract with the Suns. Knight was traded by Milwaukee to Phoenix in February in a multi-team deal. Baseball, Tigers right-hander Justin Verlander returns from a back issue and will start tomorrow against the Pirates. The Giants' Tim Lincecum heading to the DL for the first time in his career. The team feels that his arm could use a break.
Stop the breakfast blahs and start your morning with sweet and delicious Hostess breakfast. Get some today at a nearby store. The sweetest cure for the breakfast blahs. Hostess breakfast. Up and eat 'em.
Hey everybody, this is Jerry the King Lawler from WWE, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix, live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. J-Rocc, Jonathan Knight in the studio, having some fun. Hopefully you guys are as well. As we pick it back up, now we're going to dive into it, of course, the making of Major League. Jonathan Knight got to sit down and break into not just the movie that so many times we reference here in Cleveland sports, but really how it was put together, how it almost didn't happen, and then how it did, and all of that. We're about to have some fun. I know I've got calls in the queue. We're going to get to you guys. 216-539-7535. Best way to get through social media, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at thesportsfixcle. Email us, thesportsfix@aol.com. JK, my man, welcome back in. And as let's switch over. We were talking about the Indians, and they're struggling and all. Just during the break, we're like, man, I don't want to give up too soon or whatever. But at least in Major League, you can reach the point where they go, there's only one thing left to do. Win the whole effing thing.
And this is good. This actually is a great segue, because this is how, especially pre-Jacobs Field, but although I still do it, pre-Jacobs Field, I would always pay attention to what the real Indians were doing each year in those at those turns in the movie when they say Rachel Phelps is walking around, well, they're 15-24, they're 7 games out of first, they're 60-60, they're 9 games out of first, and I think, okay, all right, we're still alive, we're doing better than they were in the movie, or oh my God, we're worse than they were in the movie, they can't possibly come back. So at this stage, so I always pay attention. After 39 games, where are they? After 120 games, where are they? Are we better or worse than Major League? Is there still a possibility they can turn this around? At this point, they're sinking a little bit. So they were better at 39 games than they were in the movie, which was good. But boy, we're heading toward that 120 game mark, and it doesn't look like they're going to be at 60 wins. Then.
No, it's starting to look like Major League 3 here, man. I'm and off the field, man.
Yeah,
but
you talk about a wide awake nightmare. We're heading down that road.
Of your 2.5 years, Major League 3 probably took you about a week to knock
that's way no. It took about 45. Well, it took honestly, it took as long as it took to watch the movie, because I had never seen it. I had heard of it. I remember it coming out, and had never actually seen it. I thought, well, okay, due diligence. I need to do this. And you think, folks, if you haven't seen this movie, it's worse than whatever you've heard. Whatever you have heard, it's actually worse than that. And the buzz. Yes, the buzz that has nothing. And that's the thing to me that is unforgivable. Like, if it had just been a baseball movie, it still would have been good, but it'd have been fine. But to call it Major League and then not connect it in any way is just, it was very shallow.
And the part that got me was, I get they didn't want maybe they didn't want to pay for the licenses or whatever, maybe, but they still made it a minor league franchise of the Twins and not the Indians. Why wouldn't the buzz have at least just been the Indians farm club?
Exactly. You needed some kind of connection. If you were going to call it Major League, you had to connect. And I guess in their minds, their connection was that Roger Dorn was the owner,
that's it.
But not even the owner of the minor. He owned the Twins. He had nothing, so there was really no. We don't want to spend any more time on this than we need to. But yeah, it was just like these Indians. It can get worse, and that's worse.
Oh, for sure, man. I'll tell you though, seriously, that's the worst of the bunch. Let's go back to the beginning. What I think was funny was, everybody, and I'm one of the same guys, like I equate it, especially because Major League 2 came out right at the start of Jacobs Field. So I think you kind of tie those good feelings together with the Major League movies and the Indians switch over to Progressive Field and all of that, and everybody goes, hey, that's Serrano, and hey, that's this guy, But what's funny is that movie was supposed to be made in the early 80s, or at least that's when it was
Right.
conceptually put together,
Right.
which is funny because that was way before Jacobs Field was even
Right.
in the ether. This was,
Right.
what, 84?
David Ward finished the script, the original script for Major League. He finished in 1984.
Right.
And it would be 5 years before it hit theaters, which is amazing. I mean, if there's anything that kind of stunned me going through the book and learning all these little tidbits, there are a lot of things I didn't know, a lot of things that surprised me, but that may top the list, that it took that long. And we're not talking about to physically make the movie. That took 10 weeks to shoot it. It took a summer. But to get it into production, the amount of resistance, the amount of static that David Ward and Chris Chesser, who is the producer of the movie, what they had to deal with to get this thing greenlit, incredible. Because and I guess that's a common thread through a lot of classic Hollywood movies is, oh well, it never wanted to get made. You know, people didn't want to make it and it almost didn't get made. So that seems to be a common thread. And you hear that story and think, my God, who's in Hollywood? What you see this beloved movie, it's like, oh, they didn't want to make The Godfather, they didn't want to make Citizen Kane, they didn't want to make Gone with the what do they want to make? And you look at Major League, and 25 years later, 26 years later, people adore this movie and think, my gosh, why? I guess that you just don't foresee that. You don't foresee that happening. I don't know what you do foresee happening, but yeah, there was a lot. That was surprising that it took that long to make this movie, and now it's lived on for forever, essentially.
Right. Same thing I noticed. I mean, you talked about it. It almost got picked up, and then it got put back on the shelf, and it got switched over to like a different company or something in development, and then they almost went with it, and it just kind of, and then that's how it goes, and then boom, somebody decided, you know what, we're gonna make this movie, and then off and running, and there you go. But I mean, I'll tell you, it's so funny too, because you mentioned it in the book how you could never get away with making a movie. Baseball would not allow what happened here. But because it was the mid-'80s and because it was, hell, maybe it was because it's Cleveland and it's like, it's the Indians. It's not the Yankees or whatever, you know?
And
but the fact that they, and Bobby D talked about that in your book, about how he was even surprised that baseball let as much get into the movie as did. But that's what makes the movie. I mean, you know what I mean? The scenes that people say, oh, they use a little too much salty language or whatever. But, I mean, without that movie is a totally different movie. I mean, the lines are priceless lines, you know?
And that's, again, not to spend too much time on the sequels, but that if you look at the biggest difference between Major League and Major League 2, it is that saltiness. And that's what people really loved about the first one. I think because there was a concerted effort with the second one to make it more family friendly, to make it PG and not even PG-13, which is surprising at that point. That was the biggest difference, and probably the biggest reason why it was just PG. It wasn't even PG-13. I mean, that, and I can even remember at the time, that was kind of a warning light that went on, like, wait a minute, how do you go from an R-rated, raunchy, 99 verbal obscenities in a 106-minute movie to PG? I mean, even today, there are very few PG movies. There's G and there's PG-13. Very rare. I mean, you're talking a level of tameness that is like a 9-year-old is going to have a problem if it's really that tame. So there's your first indication. But I bring that up only to point out that, it was really that saltiness and that raunchiness that made Major League really beloved. It's weird in a way. But also that yes, you could not make that movie today. Major League Baseball would not allow that script to be shot with all the system of controls that they have. That would never be made. Not just for the language, but for the basic premise of an owner
tanking their team,
wanting their team to lose so they can move it.
But that's
because
real.
That's happened now. You know, we've seen in Cleveland. We've seen, not with the Indians, of course, but basically it forecasted what was going on with the Browns to some extent.
Was it the last chapter in the book there that you kind of tied that together? I mean, really. That's what hurts watching it is because at almost the same time, that's happening in real life with Art Modell moving the Browns and all of that stuff, man. And that's the thing. But you're right. The leagues don't want that because they're full of teams that do that every year.
It's a business
intentionally,
decision. Right?
Man,
and it looks like that. It looks like they are doing them. They don't want that being brought up. And that's, you look at the 80s, you look at how that is. We have when they send it along, now Major League Baseball has an entire office office, an entire division that deals with properties and getting permissions for TV, movies, whatever. Back then, it just went to somebody's desk. Here's how crazy it was, that at the time, the script actually was given to Peter Ueberroth, who was the commissioner of baseball. Yeah. He made some notes. That's what you're talking about. You're talking maybe 3 people looked at this thing and said, what do you think? Do you like it? Okay, fine, go ahead. Not anymore. That ship has sailed.
It's amazing to think about that. And too, you talk about how that separates it from the sequels. And obviously, the cast talks about it too. I mean, even when you make little changes, you change Willie Mays Hayes to Omar Epps. I mean, those little changes, you start to see. But, I mean, they kind of lucked into, think about Major League and then change out some of those actors, change out anybody that played the main parts. I mean, put Omar Epps in Major League One. Willie Mays Hayes is not the same character. Right. Wesley Snipes. And I mean, it just happened to be pre-Blade, pre the big Wesley Snipes run. So you got him right before. That's why he wouldn't do Major League 2, because he's like, I don't do that anymore. Yeah. But you got Charlie Sheen right before the true crest. Tom Berenger was still really relevant. And I mean, you had Rene Russo, a lot of, and obviously, Lou Brown. I mean, that's the iconic baseball manager. And he wasn't even, acting for a while before, or what was it with him?
Lou Brown?
Yeah.
James Gammon, he was a character actor. He was certainly not a leading man type of actor, but he'd been in a lot of westerns. I think he has that look. And he was ironically, and he was, and people, especially in Cleveland, my gosh, people love him. There's a story I can tell you about.
I'd hire Lou Brown now.
We need a Lou Brown right now, to be honest with you. But he, ironically, of all of the characters, of all the actors that played these characters, and there's so many of them, like you said, they're just natural fits. The only actor that David Ward had in mind for any of the characters was James Gammon as Lou Brown. When he's writing the script, he's the only one who's like, I have to have this actor to play this role. Everything else was wide open. He never had Charlie Sheen in mind, never had Bob Uecker in mind to play Harry Doyle. Craziness. Lou Brown as James Gammon as Lou Brown was the only one.
And I can see it. I mean, you can't imagine anybody else playing that role. You bring up Bob Uecker, same thing there. That's nuts, because nobody else makes Harry Doyle except Bob Uecker. And the best part about that, I read in a book, is that he was he didn't even do anything with the rest of the actors. He was like a 1 or 2 day. He just went and shot some lines, had no clue the way it was all gonna come into the thing. You know what I mean? That's what's kind of cool, is that he didn't even see the finished product until it was over. They just said, here, I'm busy, it's an off day, I'll come shoot my lines. And then he wasn't even seeing the action that he was putting the lines to, right? He was simply visualizing and going. And boy, man, that is, Harry Doyle's the one that comes out of everything. You know what I mean?
He, in some ways, he really kind of is the heart of the movie. That's strange to say, because he is sort of peripheral to everything. He doesn't really interact with any of the characters or any of the actors besides Monty, the color man. But yeah, and he did all of his work in 2 days. He did all of those scenes in the booth in 2 days without seeing any of the action, without physically describing it. He's working off of the script.
That's nuts.
So yeah, it's that, and that's a testament to David Ward's direction and Bob Uecker's performance and understanding of what kind of movie this was and what he could bring to it.
And he brought a lot.
And he did.
Seriously. What's nuts is I didn't notice until reading the book, and then now obviously I think back, the difference even in Bob Uecker from Major League 1 to Major League 2, how it wasn't exact, you know what I mean? But it's you don't catch lightning in a bottle a second time, and when you try, it's never as good as when it just comes out of the ether the first time, and that's a lot of it right there. Even though I don't dislike Major League 2 as much as some people do. I think it was actually kind of a logical extension of it was the only place you could kind of go from the first one.
And the book goes into this a little bit, and I feel the same way as you. I'll criticize Major League 2, and
it's not great,
and it's not right, and it's not terrible. The third one, that's terrible. Yes. Okay, I think we can all agree on that. That is what a terrible movie looks like. Major League 2 was the natural place to go. And I think if there's anything that the book does try to do with Major League 2, it does kind of try to put it into perspective and not just say, oh, it was a bad sequel and they messed up. It puts it into perspective and explains kind of why the things that people didn't like about it, why that happened. And one of them we talked about already was that there was a there was a concerted effort or direction coming down from the studio. No, this needs to be a PG movie, a PG sequel to an R-rated movie. So right away, you've got trouble. And then you've got, then there's problem. The other big issue with it is that it took too long. It was 5 years later. If you're going to make a sequel, especially to a comedy, you need to crank that sucker out by about no longer than 3 years.
So funny you mentioned that, because I got into an argument years ago with somebody about Major League, because I did not think it came out as early as it did because of how late the second one came out, because I knew that was already 94, Jacobs Field. And I'm like, 89? That movie did not come out in the 80s. That was early. And because you didn't realize that 5 years
you would think that it would have come out
right.
That it was that long.
Because I tie the movies together to Jacobs Field and
any
to
other
that
comedy.
whole
If
thing.
you look at basically any other comedy from the 80s or 90s that had a sequel to it, it did not take that long.
They're usually working on the sequel.
They're usually it's like it has a big opening weekend. All right, let's start on the sequel, and it's out within a year. They're not stupid. They know that that's how it works. You want to strike while the iron is hot, and that's why. And you just inadvertently missing the other thing that kind of doomed Major League 2 a little bit was that it did come out literally hours before Jacobs Field opened. So while that was kind of cool, it's like, oh, this is a great week for Cleveland baseball. At the same time, it's like, we don't really need this movie.
Real thing
we got the
now.
real thing now. There's much more excitement about the Indians. Where there again, if it had come out 2 years earlier, 3 years earlier, the Jacobs Field was still down the line. We didn't need that. And of course, the Indians then go on to be successful and are in the World Series a year later. Major League there was not as much appetite for it then.
You're listening to the Sports Fix. J-Rocc, Jonathan Knight. We're talking about the making of Major League. You know what? We're getting ready to cross into the second hour here. Let me go to the phones. This is a good time to take a break here. Let's go to the phones. Caller, interrupt our conversation. You're up on the Sports Fix. How you doing? Who is this?
Hey, it's Bruce. Good morning,
How you
J-Rocc.
doing? What's up, my man?
I'm doing good. Hey, I wanted to talk to JK. Is there any coincidence, or has anybody else noticed the resemblance between a cheap owner and the outfield wall at Jacobs Field kind of looks like Major League 2?
I
think
hilarious.
We got every advertiser Cleveland's ever had on that wall.
We need the proctologist out there, the fertilizer services. The funny thing about that is that when that came out, when Major League 2 came out, that was actually one of the things that Major League Baseball had a problem with that script in that scene where they're showing them selling advertisements on the outfield wall. Major League Baseball says, no, we don't do that. You're disgracing the field. And they had a little issue with that. And they're like, no, it's just a joke. Don't worry about it. It's just a joke. It's not like it's ever going to happen.
Except now.
Perhaps that's what planted the seed. And now every single outfield wall in Major League Baseball is covered with that kind of stuff. So perhaps not. Perhaps I think they're charging a little more than the Indians were charging in Major League 2. But that's sort of where that idea germinated.
Bruce, my man, I know you're one of the guys that's big into this movie like us, so into it. You have a copy of the movie script, right? You have the original script.
Yeah, I've actually bought a Hollywood script.
Oh, that's great.
And so I actually have the actual signatures of everybody that was in the movie, and
oh, cool.
It was like $1,100, but hey.
Hey, wow,
every penny.
I got everybody's autograph, and it was worth it. But,
and Bruce,
I can't wait to get the autograph book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've got one for you. We'll take care of you.
I'll charge you $1,000.
Bruce, real quick, before you go into something, I wanted to ask you, because you're a perfect guy to symbolize what I'm about to ask about, which is the fan of the Indians forever. During the dry run. I mean, for younger fans, even for guys my age, you may have suffered through the 80s, which I basically lived through the 80s, and that's about it. And then, you hit the 90s. So I may have suffered through 10 or 15 bad years, but guys like you literally went through decades, Bruce, of living and dying
30
with bad Indians teams. You're one of the biggest Indians fans, seriously, that I've ever met in my life. You've got tons of memorabilia. What was it like for you, like when that movie came out? Because really, think about it. That's a risk to embrace a team like the Indians, at that time. And who knows if anybody's going to go out and watch it? Who knows if there's any kind of. But man, you're one of the guys that was like, hey, this is all right.
Well, not only that, but if we can be honest here, the greatest line of that movie is "The Indians win. The Indians win. Oh my God, the Indians win."
Indeed.
How long people, like myself, have waited 30 years to hear those words. And it feeds right into Tom Hamilton, where the season of dreams has become a reality. Cleveland, you will have an October to remember.
That's why what J.K. just said makes so much sense about Major League 1 and 2, because you've got the reality. Like Major League 1, it was a pipe dream that these Indians were going to do this.
It was fantasy.
Yeah,
and
Major League 2...
And it's funny you should say that, because I asked my best friend if he wanted to go see that movie with me, and he said, "No, it's just too much of a fantasy for me."
Science fiction.
So I had to go by myself, But hey, it's just the idea.
Well, Bruce, you bring up a good point, too.
Didn't want to go that far into the future, I guess.
Were you at all bothered, as I'm asking people, especially who were long-standing fans of the Tribe back then, were you at all bothered by just the general concept before you saw the movie, that it was, in a way, sort of making fun of the Indians? Did that give you any pause at all, that they're turning the Indians into a punchline, or were you more open to it?
I was kind of more open because I wanted to watch a movie about the Indians. I really didn't think about the humor or whatever. I just went to see a movie about the Indians, with the Indians in it. Because over the years, there's been tons of Yankees movies and,
right, yeah,
stuff like that. So I just wanted to see a movie that actually, was centered around the Indians.
And from a Cleveland guy, too, I think that was the key to the whole thing. I think the opposite end of that, and that it had to be the Indians. We saw a little bit last year when Draft Day came out with Kevin Costner, that was not originally the Browns. The Browns were thrown in there. It could have been anybody, right? It could have been any NFL team that hasn't been successful in recent years. But Major League had to be the Indians. It was always the Indians. David Ward's from Cleveland, and the book goes into this a little bit. But David Ward really, that to the point that if Major League Baseball had come back and said, "Yeah, okay, the script is approved, but it has to be a fictional team. You can't use a real team with all the language and all the hijinks and everything that's going on," David Ward would have walked away. That would have been a deal breaker for him. And I would think that's one of the reasons that the movie has endured and why Cleveland loved it so much, because that sense of Cleveland, that sense of this really about the Indians, was baked into the movie.
Okay, now I know you guys were talking earlier about relating to some of the players like Albert Bell being Serrano and stuff like that. What about Francona when 2013, before we actually made it to the playoffs? I bet you Francona, in the first meeting in the locker room said, every sports writer in the country has picked us to finish dead last. That would have fit right in with that movie. Let's give them one big shit burger, and
that's
basically what happened. I mean, we won 10 in a row and almost
right.
Pulled
and
off the miracle.
How that season ended. So similar to how the movie ended, to the point that they actually had the exact same record. The Indians of 2013 finished at 92-70 by winning 20 of their last 25, which is essentially exactly what happened in the movie, and it leads to a one-game playoff at home. Of course, they lose in real life. But maybe that makes it more telling, because that made it really kind of stand out as so like a carbon copy of Major League.
Let me ask you guys, both of you here, with what you just said, and I think you talked about it a bit in the book, the end. Everybody's got a different feeling of whether they should have showed the Indian. Like, I like the fact that they didn't finish it, that they left it right where it was, because that was the climax of the story at that point. Whatever happened from there, you can decide. Did the Indians win? Did they lose? What happened? Who knows? And then they answered that obviously at the beginning of the second one. But I kind of dug the way it ended, because that was the moment, almost like the first time you make it in '95 after 30 plus years or whatever. It's like, yeah, we didn't win, but boy, we'll never forget that season.
Yeah. And that was something that I wanted to ask David Ward about.
They stopped it exactly where they should have stopped it.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I can remember asking that or wondering that as the credits rolled the very first time I saw it in 1989, and turning to my dad and said, "Well, but what did they do in the playoffs?" And I'll never forget. He said, "It doesn't matter." And he had the spirit right. Like, it doesn't matter. The Indians won. Yes, they were moving on. Their season wasn't over. But for us, for Cleveland, that's what we needed. That's all we needed at that point, and that's what we got.
And that was what I thought they did a good job of tying into Major League 2 is I did think that was almost like Rocky 3, although nowhere near as good. Because Rocky 3 is a classic movie and Major League 2 is not. But the idea is the same, that you had a little success and now you splinter that off and everybody's got press people and agents and everybody's got commercials and Willie Mays Hayes wants to hit home runs now. And I still, White Lightning, Black Hammer,
I would see that movie. In fact,
with Jesse Ventura.
That has to be better than Back to the Minors, right?
I ain't got time to bleed, But
just about anything's better than that movie, though.
I'm telling you,
I mean, it didn't even have the tribe in it. I mean, it was the Twins. I was disappointed in the first 5 minutes.
The third one? Oh, absolutely, man. But I did like that because I thought that was at least a natural storyline. And then everybody ditches their modern stuff and gets back to being, athletes and gladiators. And Charlie Sheen puts the glasses back on and we're going to work.
Right. But,
Okay, JK, I have a quick question for you. I don't know how much you follow other movies. I want to kind of ask you about Forrest Gump.
Okay.
Tom Hanks, we all know, started in Cleveland at the Playhouse Square.
Sure.
And used to go to Indians games on his off nights to watch the tribe, and then became an Indians fan. At the end of Forrest Gump, when Jenny dies, on the headstone is March 22nd. Of course, the year's different, but the date is March 22nd. And that's the date of the boating accident with Steve Owen and Tim Cruise.
You're right.
Now, is there some kind of connection between Tom Hanks being from Cleveland and that headstone?
I would not think so.
When did they make Forrest Gump, though?
Forrest Gump came out in 94.
Right, so it was
being filmed in 93. So I guess it's possible. I never noticed that. I never would have thought that. My gosh, that may be a Da Vinci Code type of code you've cracked here. Wow. It wasn't.
I mean, it just always bothered me that when I've seen that movie, I always see that date, and it reminds me of Steve Owen, and I just wondered if there was a Cleveland connection.
That's interesting. I honestly, I wouldn't think so. I mean, if Tom Hanks had written the script or it was his original story or something, maybe. But I have a feeling that may have been baked in. That may just have been coincidence, especially since it had just happened. It would have happened maybe just a couple of months before they were filming it. But plus, was it at that point in the movie? I know a lot of Forrest Gump is a flashback. At that point in the movie, was that modern day? Like, would it have been 1993 or was it in the 80s at that point? I can't remember.
I believe it would have been 93 because she died. I'd have to look at the movie to see what the date.
Yeah, I don't remember the timeline. If it was exactly
that would be crazy
in the modern day of the time, or was it in the 80s? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
and you know what? Seriously,
it would have been
something like that doesn't even have to happen at the top of the food chain. That could be something anybody along the line. They just put the dates on the tombstone. Somebody goes, hey, it could be anybody.
Second unit
Grip could
stuff.
Do it, you know? I mean, who knows?
Art director, yeah. I don't even know if it would have been in the script, really. It may have been something that they just said, okay, we need to film a tombstone today. Somebody throw out a date. Let's go.
Oh,
yeah,
see, here's why
maybe there was
according to the what I just looked up on the wiki
and
here
wiki
for the
never
movie,
lies.
that the reason they picked that date, it was March 22nd, 1982. It was the day the space shuttle Columbia launched. So that's why they say they chose it. Although I did find a mistake here looking it up. They said that she died on a Saturday, but March 22nd, 1982 was a Monday. So there you go. But Bruce, still, that's a good point, man. Way to pull that up.
Good
still,
catch.
March 22nd, man.
Well played.
I'll tell you what.
Unlike I remember dates real well.
I know you do, Bruce.
In Indian history, so that just kind of stuck in my mind.
The man with that. Anything else, Bruce?
No, that'd be it. Congratulations. I do have your book, The Browns Bible.
That's right.
Great.
I'm not a real big Browns fan, but I do use it to reference things, so you do come in handy now and then. And,
well, I try. And like I tell Jerry, if nothing else, that book is a heck of a doorstop. If there's a really big spider, that comes in handy.
Yeah, it sits on my desk, and every once in a while I have to dust it. But
it's a piece of furniture.
Look at it. Bruce, seriously.
It's part of the family now. What can I tell you?
Last question, Bruce. Let me ask you something, man. The real-life Indians, are they making a charge here? Are they sticking it to Rachel Phelps in the second half, or are they dead in the water, man?
I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I'm still looking back on Kansas City was 50-50 after 100 games last year.
I know.
So
I know.
Still holding out hope.
Bro, that's why I refuse to just throw this season away, But at the same time, you just gotta see him come to life here, man.
Particularly after what the Cavs just did. I mean, you remember at this stage of their season, they were equally a train wreck.
Tell you what, Bruce made a great point earlier in the chat room. Imagine if LeBron didn't come home and the Cavs this year, because they were still probably a year off from being a playoff team. Mm-hmm. They weren't a championship team. But, I mean, no.
Without
I think
LeBron.
They'd have made the playoffs.
We said that a year ago, though.
Well, that's true. But either way, imagine that run doesn't happen. Imagine LeBron gets hurt halfway through and they don't make the playoffs. Whatever it is, we don't have that Cavs run. You got the Browns, the way a good season turned sour, and Hoyer and all of that stuff, and then it goes right into a Cavs season that would have been and then this with the Indians. This would be a miserable 2015.
Terry Francona may not be the manager today if the Cavs not gone to the finals. I mean, I hate to be trite
that is
about
very
it.
True. And I was thinking about
different.
that last night, when they were, people were calling talk shows and saying, the Indians stink and, Francona needs to look for another job or something. And I'm thinking, it's not Francona and it's not the team that we have on the field. It's the front office. And I went back and looked, and I'm sure you know that when we made the trade with CC Sabathia, and it was Brantley that was a throw-in that trade.
That is true. Brantley wasn't even what they wanted.
He was the player
we
to
wanted
be named
Laporta.
later.
Was the original
we wanted
trade.
Laporta.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's right.
Bruce, I hear you, man. No, you did a great rant I saw the other day on your
so
Facebook
if you trace our family tree back since Antonelli and Chaparro have been here, just about everything they've done, the success that they've had by accident.
In evaluating other teams' players, usually, not their own.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to.
Rogers.
Right.
Do we give them credit for being geniuses, or did they just luck into that a couple of times, man?
Well, if you look back at the trades and the free agents and everything, they have just lucked into stuff.
You know what? Some of that is hard to argue, but the scary thing is the rabbit hole you go down because they're all tied together. Yeah. That's the problem. Is I would never get rid of Terry Francona, but I think if one goes, they all go. I think it's a package deal.
But here's the thing, though. You look back on just the fifth starters we've had since 2013, and we have not had a regular fifth starter at all.
We haven't had a regular first starter.
Well, that's true, too. But, no, I know what he's saying.
Like I said, they kind of lucked into that with Kluber last year.
Well, no, but I know what you mean. In general, last year
is the one taking charge this year.
I mean, he was even trying to just hang around in that fourth, fifth spot last year until he got himself out of the bullpen and back in.
They haven't had an ace. They haven't had a dependable pitcher
Tomlin,
for back-to-back seasons.
McAllister, we've gone through them.
Sure.
I mean,
we
go back to
Sabathia and Cliff
2.3 runs a game. The league average is 5.
I know, Bruce. See? We're getting too depressed here, man. We got to get back to the movie, my friend. We're trying to stay off of this.
Now, the only problem I had with the movie Major League was that there was no reference to any of the Indians' radio stations or TV stations in the booth. They were all Milwaukee. Was there any
in the actual stadium? Yeah,
because those are little things that slip the quality control, perhaps that slips through. That
WTMJ on the scoreboard, which if you notice they fixed in Major League 2. There's radio stations, TV stations all over the place in Major League 2, and that's Camden Yards for God's sake. They were all legit.
3WE and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was KNR. I mean, they must have paid for those. I don't know how they did it. They were a little more savvy about it, but yeah, that's something that they really did address in the second movie.
Yeah, I noticed in the second movie they did catch their mistakes, but a lot of things I mean, just with the movie itself was just an awesome movie. You weren't even paying attention unless you actually knew. So,
Right.
Even in the sense of County Stadium looking like Cleveland Stadium.
Actually, that's a great setup, Bruce. I want to use that. Anything else? Because I'm going to segue right into things you may not have known that happened in that movie. That was a good setup. Anything else, my man?
no, I'm good. And
right.
keep up the good work, and I hope to continue reading your books. So,
Well, thank you.
you're always a pleasure. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, my
Take
man.
it easy, Bruce. Great phone call, you guys. 216-539-7535. And that's, like I said, segue right off in that. There's tons of things probably that people did not know about this. Hell, the biggest one is that there may be a new one. I'm going to start right there because that was my favorite discovery in the book, is the fact that sitting on a shelf somewhere is a script written and ready to go for a new movie that actually is much more like the first movie than the other ones. And it's just sitting there. Come on, man. They make Swamp People. They make
Sharknado.
Sharknado 3. There's been multiple sequels of Sharknado. We can't get somebody to finance, and that, I know they're waiting on money. Charlie Sheen is worth billions of dollars. These guys, brands are worth so much. You would think that they could walk that into a studio and say, we need to make this movie, and somebody will make the movie. You got Wesley Snipes willing to do it. You got big stars willing to do it. To me, I don't know how you can't get that financed, like you said, but we can have 3 Sharknados.
Yeah, and it especially to us, to non-Hollywood insiders, it's mind-boggling and frustrating to think, well, this is a no-brainer. This is a popular movie 25 years later. You've got this great new script, which I've read, which is great.
I hate you.
It would be.
I hate you for that.
It would be better
man.
than 2 and 3. It probably. I mean, it's up there with the first. I mean, it's always you're hesitant to say that a sequel would be better, but it is. It's a fantastic. It's just a matter of ironing out rights and all hurdles that need to be. And you're hitting a point now where the window is starting to close. So if they can't
20 was it 20 years?
Last year was 25.
25 was just last year, which would have been the perfect
which would
kind
have
of
been about right.
timing.
Yeah, and that was this thing was written it's very similar backstory to the first movie. It's now been 5 years that this script has been written.
Maybe it goes now. That's why I was joking that maybe you lit a fire under
maybe
Charlie
we can,
Sheen.
Yeah, maybe. And everybody wants to do it. That's the encouraging thing, is that Charlie wants to do it. Wesley Snipes wants to do it. Tom Bear, everybody that is a key player in this wants to do it.
And they reboot everything now. We just watched that a horrible reboot of National Lampoon's Vacation, and that's a classic movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the new thing. It's not just sequels, it's just reboots. Anyway, this is the best of both worlds, and it's 25 years later, and there's nostalgia. And the other thing, too, that I think you and I may have even brushed on just talking over the phone on the show, is you're walking the line now of it being realistic, that 25 years later, Charlie Sheen could still be physically capable. Right. That guys are not on walkers at this point, which I'm joking, but because what is it? Charlie Sheen would still be pitching in this movie, right? The others would be managers,
right? And that's exactly right. So that's sort of the hinge of this, or the plausibility of it, is Charlie Sheen being able to
Scott Atkinson,
like if he's 70, if he's 75 years old, I think we've probably missed our window there. But that's the basic premise is the Indian, and there'd be all new characters, so there'd be some new stuff in there as well. But the basic premise is that the Indians are, in the modern day right now, they're in a pennant race. Jake Taylor is the manager. They need to bring in some talent quickly. They've had some key injuries. They've got about a month to go, and they need to quickly fill some of these roles. So they bring in some new guys, some new colorful characters, bringing in from the minors or wherever else. One of them is a hot shot pitcher from the minor leagues who comes in, who we'll get there. And another one is they go, and Jake says, well, let's go get Vaughn. And Rick Vaughn, not to give too much away of this, but Rick Vaughn is working at a car dealership. He sits in a room all day, and if you come and test drive a car, you get to play catch with Rick Vaughn.
Oh, okay.
And he gets brought in. So he gets brought in, and then he finds out that he's connected with the young phenom pitcher, is the son that he never knew he had. So, and it leads, obviously, there's all kinds of things that happen in there that are just fantastic. But that's the basic premise of what it would be.
See, that movie has to get made. Get made, you would think.
And if there's a silver lining, like you said, with reboots, even if this movie doesn't get made, at some point we will get a reboot of Major League. I'm not saying it's better. I would much rather see this sequel get made than a reboot.
I gotta think
but at some point, just the marketability of it. I mean, everything's being rebooted. Ghostbusters now is
getting
being filmed
made.
right
I can
now.
feel it because it's not just, even if it's not a major motion release, which it would be with that level of star power in it. I know Wesley Snipes isn't at that level anymore, but they're still big. Charlie Sheen still got buzz. These guys are still top guys. But I mean, you would still I think I lost my train of thought there where I was going, but I completely lost where I was going with that one, man.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, I was going somewhere and I just let my attention go elsewhere. But the expansion of the availability, not just major media, major motion studios, but Netflix. And they do original everything. That's where I was going. I just completely lost my train of thought there. There's all of these other major places to release movies that want original content. Like Netflix is buying original content so that you have to go to Netflix and watch it. Hulu is buying original movies,
true.
So there's a whole new distribution level for that stuff. You've got to think the odds are good that something like that
they
gets
would
made.
find a home somewhere somehow. Yeah. That's the hope. But then the compromise there is maybe if it goes Netflix, if it goes Amazon Prime, whatever, that there's maybe not as much interest from the cast member. I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. I would think that stigma is gone, that it's not like it's a made-for-TV type of thing, that at this point there's enough respect for HBO series and Netflix original series that wouldn't be a problem. But who knows? I mean, you're talking about a lot of stars aligning, literally stars aligning to make this happen. So any change in that variable is like pulling out a Jenga block. You just don't know what's going to happen next.
Speaking of stars aligning, talking about some of the stories, you mentioned how, James Gammons was really the only one that they had in mind. Like, he's got to play Lou Brown here. What were some close calls with some of the other people? Like I mentioned, you can't go without Willie Mays Hayes or, Wesley Snipes. But what were the closest calls to not being the people that they ended up being in the movie?
Probably the closest was Margaret Whitten, who played Rachel Phelps, was not the original actor who was offered that role. It was Diane Cannon, actually, was offered the role, who was a fairly well-known actress at the time. She'd had a couple of Academy Award nominations and was more or less offered the part, and then Paramount came in and, not knowing that she had been offered the part, recommended Margaret Whitten. Margaret Whitten had really built her career on the stage, is a fantastic actor, and had kind of broken into film with Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox, which had just been a couple of years before that, and played a similar type of. She was the aunt, not a different movie, but a similar kind of character, and it worked out brilliantly to the point that she was so good as that villain that they wound up having to change the ending because everyone loved hating her so much.
That's perfect. That part there about the end of the movie, something so many people may not know, is that it was a completely different. They had to switch everything because they were going with the swerve ending, and then all of a sudden they showed it to people, and people didn't like it, and I don't blame them because you kind of pulled the rug out from the whole. Like, the whole movie was fake now. And at that point, we're pretending so that it can be real, and people don't buy that, And, like, even I do pro wrestling, and many times when you do a storyline there, people will overthink it. They'll do the same thing. They'll do a storyline where they were pretending to be on somebody's side, to set it up. But meanwhile, you hurt your friends along the way. And then at the end, they wonder why the swerve doesn't get over. And it's because, but you really were hurting your friends along the way, but I'm supposed to believe that this was all a setup at the end. Well, you're just a bad person because you were bad all along, and you were doing it for a good reason. So that's kind of a pull the rug out from under him. But what was cool about that was how they had to refilm. Right. And she was, She
was in London at the time.
Talk about that.
She was on another series. So basically, the original ending, if you're not familiar with it, the original ending that was scripted and filmed and cut together was that right before the final game, Lou Brown storms into Rachel Phelps' office and says, "I'm quitting. I can't. As soon as this game's over, win or lose, I'm out the door because I hate what you've done. I'm not going to stand here and allow you to do this." And she reveals to him, "No, this was this is what I had to do." I wanted you to win. I put this team together because, one, it's all I could afford, but I recognized these talents in other players, and I knew that you were the guy that could bring them out. And there was never a deal to move the team. It was basically just to save the team from going bankrupt, and then she would have to sell it to someone who would move the team. So she became like a heroic character. She also essentially became Billy Bean. If you look at it the right way, she was playing Moneyball in that version of the story. She had no money, but she recognized talents and in little intricacies of these players that others did not, and was able to put together a winning team. So there's that scene that you get that reveal, and then through that last game, all the scenes where we see her, I hate this effing song, it's actually, she's cheering. She's dancing to Wild Thing as it comes out. It's just a completely different ending. The test audience hated that ending, mostly because she was so good the rest of the movie as being a bad guy. They didn't want to see her just suddenly become a good guy. And so they had to quickly reshoot just a couple of weeks, essentially, about 2 months before the movie came out. They had to go to London, build a set on another stage, and so all of those scenes you see of her moping through that final game it's not in Milwaukee, it's in London. She's on a soundstage in London that they restructured or recreated her booth and shot all of those inserts and then plugged them in, and then it tested much better.
And you can't even tell. I thought was
never would
interesting.
Have known.
When you said that, I'm like, wow, they rebuilt. And it said even David Ward was amazed at how dead on they got it, just like the one here. But yeah, you can't change that character. I mean, to me, the all the stuff that she does, the best is when this guy's dead. Well, cross him off. People to this day look at Matt Laporta on the Indians roster, and they go cross him off. Then they make that say all of those jokes apply today. When I texted you about it when I was reading the book. To this day, when the Indians have one hit in a game, tell me everybody doesn't go, what, one goddamn hit? That's it?
That's all we got.
Nobody's
listening anyway. The second part might be true. Yeah.
But I mean, to this day that lives on. I mean, second reflex. If I'm in the car and it's the second inning, third inning, it doesn't matter. If I hear Hemi go, no runs, one hit for the Indians, one hit, that's it. One hit, it lives with you because of that movie.
Yeah, and that's so true. And even going back to the twist ending, and a lot of people don't like it, and I totally understand that. And the movie is better for it being the way that it is than that. But to stand up and look at it from just another way, it does add, and Margaret Whitten pointed this out, and she goes into it in the book, to look at it another way, for as much as you may not like it or may not like that character twist that comes out of nowhere, at the same time, it does explain how the Indians just suddenly got good. Because if there's a flaw in logic, which let's not spend a lot of brain power bringing a whole lot of logic to a movie like this, but there is sort of what they just needed to try harder to get good. Why is it? No, it was that they needed time. They all had it in them all along, and that's part of this monologue that she gives to Lou Brown, that she knew that this is not a surprise to her. This is what she planned on doing. So there's implausibility there that she could do this, particularly in a pre-Moneyball baseball. But it does answer that question of, okay, this wasn't an accident, because as Margaret Whitten points out, well, if it was that easy, everybody could do it.
That's a good point.
It's a double-edged sword. I think it's a tough call. They made the right call, obviously. And I wonder, too, if that kind of ending would work better today. I think we're more used to clever twists and things like that at the end of a movie than we were in the 80s. I don't know. I don't know if it would work.
I still think people would say, no, I don't like how that's it plays out perfectly. Plus, I believe, and I'm big on storytelling, you've got to have a villain to spite at the end. There's got to be, I don't know. I think that makes the story almost better, is the fact that it's happening and she's fuming and watching it and can't stop this Frankenstein monster that she put together that all of a sudden doesn't suck. Like, I just think that's what pulls it together. Like, if I watched it and saw her at the end cheer for the Indians, I don't know. I wouldn't be like,
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. I mean, that's totally true, and they made the right choice. I don't think there's any question that that's the right thing to do. One other thing that to put a point on it, another area that it does help is you could just say, well, wait a minute. Once things started to turn around, could she not have sent Rick Vaughn down to the minors?
Right.
She could have stopped this
whole thing.
before it reached that point. Or you could argue it's like, well, now people are coming. Now her plan is out of the water. You might as well root for him now because you're going to make more money. There's any number of things you can kind of pick at to be really
See, you know what? And that's where easy to pick it out 25 years later. That's actually a good point, though, and that could easily be fixed with one conversation between the general manager and Rachel Phelps where he says, hey, if you send him down to the minors, I'll tell everybody about what you're doing and blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of make her, and then she's stuck, you know, because you're right. Otherwise, why don't you just go, Jake Taylor's cut, Rick Vaughn's traded, Serrano's going back to... We've
seen this happen before. Yes. We've seen the Indians bail out in the middle of the season.
The Browns just did it to Brian Hoyer. They said, you know what? We don't care that you're winning a few games. We don't want you. We don't care. We'd rather lose without you, And they just said, go to Houston. See?
I think it would have been satisfying, too, to have what we've seen in real life, teams just bailing out on their team, bailing out on their season. But in this case, no, there was a master plan. I think it would have given us a little satisfaction that, because most of the time we see this, we know there's no master plan. They're knee-jerk reactions on a lot of these. So it would have been refreshing in a way to say an owner is setting her team on fire, or apparently doing so. But, no, it makes sense this time. There's a payoff there.
It's just funny because nowadays that's just we would be doing sports talk and just talking about it like it's just a reality. We would just be like, well, the Indians are in year 2 of the rebuilding plan. It sucks for the fans because they got rid of everybody they could play. They got a bunch of minor leaguers up here. They're going to lose as many games as possible because that's what you do. And in a few years, you hope to rebuild it back up. It's just life now, man. Cavs just went through it, Yeah. They sat here and sold you on, this guy and that guy, and you're like, come on, man.
The Browns have been doing this for 15 years now.
Carrick Felix, really? I mean, come on, brother. Don't even go on the Browns, man.
Yeah, that's a whole different story.
Jonathan Knight, J-Rocc here. Let's take our final break and come on back and wrap this thing up, you guys. Don't go anywhere. Final segment of the Sports Fix coming up next.
To the Sports Fix. If you want to be my lover.
Guys, want to take just a second as we head into this break and remind you about the official business printing source of the Sports Fix, our friends at Signs and Ship. Signs and Ship, I'm telling you, Chris and Pam, they've taken care of me since day one, and they can do the same for you. Whether you're a small business that's already been established and you're looking to grow to that next level and expand your business, or perhaps you've got an idea that you just know is going to be a great business and you need to figure out how to brand it and how to promote it and put it out there, Signs and Ship is the place for you. If you need a logo, they can create one for you. They have a fantastic graphic designer. Business cards, signs, banners, yard signs, mobile advertising, anything you can think of that you need to promote your business, they've got it at Signs and Ship. The best thing about them, too, is each of their locations, whether it's the home base here in Elyria, Ohio that I work with, or their spots in Virginia, Florida, and Pennsylvania, it's all local sourced. Very important to me because we all understand that small business is the lifeblood of the community. So check them out, signsandship.com, or call Chris and Pam today, 440-323-6060, the home office in Elyria, Ohio. Signs and Ship, quality printing at affordable prices.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. Real time spent making real decisions, creating real victory.
I'm the greatest man in the world!
And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize.
I mean, a really real prize.
Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs.
The trophy's 12 feet high, and it is glorious!
Football, baseball, hoops, you name it, they have it. Plus, they have awesome draft kits and party supplies to make all your preseason activities the envy of everyone. If your league needs a ring, belt, or trophy, or you want to upgrade what you already have, there's literally only one place to go. If you're going to be a fantasy jock, do it right.
It's mine, the most magnificent belt ever created, and it's mine.
With America's Fantasy Sports Superstore, fantasyjocks.com.
What's your fantasy?
In baseball, miracles can happen when a team works together.
2 out, bottom of the ninth, down to their last strike.
The same is true in the fight against cancer. That's why MLB has teamed up with Stand Up to Cancer. Because we believe that when we all stand up together,
41,000 on their feet,
we can make cancer history.
Now everybody's standing.
What a buzz in this building.
This is beyond a dream. Stand up with MLB at standuptocancer.org.
The Sports Fix is now available every day on the world's largest internet radio service, iHeartRadio. Download the free iHeartRadio app, subscribe to the show, and get your fix.
This is the Sports Fix. What is your name?
I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness or duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
Dude, what do you want?
Well, it's this rug I have. It really tied the room together.
We are not a show to be swept under the rug. We are a show to be heard.
It's the Sports Fix.
Indian fever, it's catching fire with everyone. Indian fever, you can be part of the fun. You're the winner at every game, that's when the excitement begins. So catch Indian fever, be a believer with the Cleveland Indians.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix. J-Rocc back in here with Jonathan Knight, Sportswriter extraordinaire. We're with you live, wrapping things up. Thanks to everybody who's been with us here today. And if you tuned in for my man Dan Wismar, and hey, my man Dan Wismar may have tuned in for Dan Wismar today. I was hoping he'd call in and join the conversation. I completely forgot that we had a clash in schedule. So Dan, if you're out there, I love you, man, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Dan will be back in here on Wednesday as always. From Everybody Hates Cleveland and the Cleveland Fan, I got kind of the commingling family.
That's
here.
right. Yeah,
Jonathan Knight, Dan Wismar, Mike Brandenberry, they all kind of overlap in different ways, and whether it's Everybody Hates Cleveland or Did the Tribe Win and all of that.
That's
and,
right.
You know, you're just continuing to, find places to get out there and do your thing. I'm telling you, I'm not just saying this because you're here, JK. I love reading your stuff. I was just telling you, there's a reason that opening day is sitting over there at the top of my book table. I just finished reading it, and when did you write that?
That was, believe it or not, that was the first one I wrote. It came out in 2004. It was my second book that came out, but I wrote it years before that. So, yeah.
And it's so, you can see the youth of your writing style compared to 10 years later.
Oh, no,
the stuff that you write, but it's still so good. I'm telling you, if you guys haven't read it, Opening Day, it's the book Jonathan Knight put together that's really two stories in one. It's the story of the first game at Jacobs Field in '94, but you tie in, you described it perfectly in the beginning when you say it's kind of like 12 Angry Men, one of those where you bounce in with the story and the past and the future, you tie it together inning by inning as you're telling me. I love it, and it takes you right back because you forget what it was like. We've been around this so long, and now we hate the Dolans, and nobody spends money, and all this stuff. But man, 93, 94.
The pure happiness of the ballpark opening, and even now, with renovations, we've reached the point where we're renovating this new ballpark that we all loved. It's nice to have that. Remember when it was new. Remember when we were new, before the Indians had gone to 2 World Series and 5 straight division titles, and we can look back and say, God, it was all ahead of us.
That was so much fun, and that's what I'm getting to. Even when you get to 96, 97, 97 turned out to be great, but the grind was there about win. We have to win. We became we became the New England Patriots fan base. Yeah. What I mean is we became that team that now we know we're going to win. Now it's World Series or bust.
If you don't win the World Series, it's a failure.
It's a failure.
Yeah.
But man, 94, I will never forget. I was so happy that the Indians caught the the White Sox and were able to nail they had those, and your book reminded me of those 2 series right before the strike when they played back. It was 2 weekends in a row. They played each other. There was only 3 days apart, and the Indians got that wild card because I tell people to this day, I thought for sure the season was going to start back. It might not start now. It might be just the playoffs. Right. But I thought for sure we were taking a break, and then 94 was starting back up. And so I remember waiting and waiting, and then finally they canceled the season, and then it dragged on. But people forget how awesome it was when it wasn't when it was first happening. It was so much fun.
That's what's so unfortunate about 94 is we hear 94 and just think strike. I mean, as we should, because that was a cataclysmic moment in baseball history. But we forget how much fun 94 was up to that point. They were starting to put it together. They didn't start out. I mean, it's similar to Major League in some ways. They were under 500 in the middle of May and then rattle off a 10-game winning streak and climb into first place. And this was like your first girlfriend. This was your first love. More so than 95, honestly. We all love 95. 95 was epic. But 94 was your first date. That was your first girlfriend. And it's overshadowed by the strike, unfortunately. Yep. But, boy, that was a special year.
Absolutely, and it just, like you said, that was when they went up for Albert Bell's bat in the
Jason Grimsley climbing through the ceiling tiles, all of that. Yeah,
that wasn't 95.
No,
that was
94, and that was a pennant race. That was something we did not have for all those years that the Indians were great. They never had to fight for anything, at least until they got into the playoffs themselves. They were just handed the division title 5 years in a row. 94, that was a dogfight. That was going to be a heck of a finish.
And I know it's not the best corollary, but 2013, it's almost like we started the cycle again, only we very quickly were ready for more. That 2013, with it being kind of magical at the end, and then Terry Francona comes in and leads the White Horse with Jason Giambi, and we go back to the playoffs, and everybody was happy just to get there. But then, we've seen that weight of expectations changes it. Now last season, which was was a failure to many people because they didn't get to the playoffs. They didn't win enough games. And I know you don't want to settle into not winning, into being happy with not winning, but it was already the bloom off the rose. But 2013 had that early Jacobs Field feel to it again.
Yeah, similar to 2007, I think, was that way to some extent. Maybe even 2005, the year they fell just short. But it had that feeling of, whoa, this is out of nowhere, and this is new and fresh, and there's no real expectation. This is fun. We haven't had that since, no.
No. Jonathan Knight, this has been fun. Having you here.
It has been fun. This has been a lot of fun, guys. This has been great.
I'm telling you guys, if it wasn't for this scheduled show, there wasn't going to be a Sports Fix today. It was going to be, sorry, we'll see you tomorrow, man, because I could not have done a show where all we have to talk about is the weekend that was for the Indians.
Like a fitting cap to this, like Harry Doyle at the end of the first game in Major League. Post-game show brought to you by, I can't find it. The hell with it. Jerry at 9 o'clock this morning.
Oh, I love it. I love it. JK, let's talk about it real quick. The Making of Major League is the book. There's 2 websites for people to find it, which we said.
Well, the same website, 2 different addresses.
Two ways to get to it. MajorLeagueBook.com or MakingOfMajorLeague.com.
That's right.
Either one takes you to that site. And then you've got your site, too, right? The
JKnightBooks.com. JKNIGHTBooks.com. You can go there, and there's samples, links, all kinds of stuff on the Major League site. There's excerpts, there's samples. You can order it from there. Of course, you can order it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. Any of the Barnes & Nobles in Northeast Ohio have it. So there's plenty of ways you can get your hands on this thing.
There you go. I'll tell you what, man. I think I've got a copy laying around here somewhere, too. Why don't we put one in somebody's hands here before you get out of here? And I'll take care of that tomorrow. I hate to do it live because so many people do digital delay and they listen to the show later. So I'll tell you what, if you guys are interested in getting your hands on a copy of this, email the Sports Fix today. I'm not even going to put any contest to it. Anybody that's listening here, I'm just going to randomly pull the winner because I should have thought of some fancy question ahead of time, but I didn't. So I'll just randomly pull the winner. But I've got a copy of this for one of you guys. The Making of Major League by Jonathan Knight. Check it out. Hit us up, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Tell me you want to get your name in the hopper, and I'll draw a winner when we come back live on the air, which, by the way, we are not here live tomorrow. We will be back in studio on Wednesday. Dan Wismar will be here, I promise, even if I got to go find him myself. He'll be here. I'm looking to get Vince McKee in the studio as well here and talk about his latest book, Ohio Warriors, coming up. A good book on some of the best MMA fighters, boxers, and wrestlers to come out of the state of Ohio. So we'll talk about all of that. But again, if you want to get a copy, hit me up, The Sports Fix at AOL.com. I've got a copy of this great book, The Making of Major League, for you. I'll draw a winner and announce it on Monday. I hear you, Chase. Send me an email, and maybe I can hook you up with the book. In the meantime, you've got, a ton more things to do here. You're going to be on TV tonight. What else do you got going on?
Going to be on tonight with Jim Donovan on Channel 3 at 7 o'clock. If you have Time Warner Cable, you can catch me on Bruce Hooley's show at 8 o'clock this evening on Time Warner Sports Channel. Taping a Channel 19 interview. I'm not sure if that's going to be tonight or if they might delay that, but we'll keep Jerry in the loop on that. So there's just no getting away from me. I'm going to be in your face for the next 12 hours. I apologize.
Love it. And how can people follow you? Social media. Twitter, at JKnightWriter.
Correct.
Right? And then you've got a Facebook page.
I do have a Facebook page. You can. It's probably the easiest thing is just to search for my name. You can find it there. There's a Jonathan Knight Writer page. You can get there and follow me there as well.
All right, there it is. Jonathan Knight. Follow him. Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. Check it out. The Making of Major League, and plus much more than that. All of the books, way too many to list. But what my favorite of all time is Sundays in the Pound. You've got the... Yeah. I told you I had the rack. Classic Jonathan Knight. I told you. I didn't just put that up because you were coming over here, but
like animal heads that you've collected them hunting. They're sitting there. You've made it through all three of those suckers. Yeah,
we've got all kinds of stuff in here. I'm telling you, one day I need to videotape and just take people around and see the goofy
tour
stuff
of the studio. This is great. I have not. I got to tell you, folks, I had never been in this studio before, and it is the ultimate man cave. This is. We joked last week. This is where the magic happens. This is where the magic happens. This is fantastic, guys. He's got to do a video tour or something.
And it was magic today. Seriously, I was so glad we were able to do this, and I was able to get you in here. Thank you so much for coming in, my man.
You bet, buddy.
And make sure you guys check him out. And of course, every week JK's here. This week we're off on Friday. He'll be back next week, and we'll do the thing and talk about the Indians and all of that stuff. Cavs, Browns, whatever's going on. For now, JK, you enjoy your rest of your tour. You guys out there, remember, not here Tuesday. We're back live Wednesday in the studio, noon, same bat time, same bat channel. Dan Wismar's in the house. Vince McKee's going to join us this week as well. Have a great night, you guys. The Indians, the Tampa Bay Rays, back at it for a couple of games before we get back. Enjoy them or whatever else you're into. And until then, we'll be back. We love you, Cleveland and beyond, and we'll see you Wednesday, noon, Daddy, right here on The Sports Fix.
Survival's our must.